Hello, my name is Krzysztof Szukieć. I'm a CEO of Stepwise, a software house from Warsaw. And today I'm going to run an interview with Merissa Silk, product leader, product owner, product designer. We used to work together in one of the previous projects. And today we are going to talk about the link between the business and the dev team.
Yes, I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to do this interview. So as said, I'm Merissa. I'm originally from New York, but I'm currently based in Berlin. I've been working in product for around 15 years now, and I've worked with teams all over the planet to build what I think is great software experiences. And I'm really excited to do this interview today.
Different product roles. I mean, we know that they are product leader, product designer, product owner. Could you briefly explain what are the differences? I mean, what are the, could you briefly describe them?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to start with the ones that are a little bit easier to explain. So usually product leader, for example, indicates that you're a product person managing other product people. That's like, at least in the industry, how that term is used specifically. In the case of product designer, this one is also a little bit easier. I think that the design industry has gone through a variety of changes over the last 5 or 10 years, especially. But when you say product designer specifically, rather than say UX or UI designer, what you mean is a design person who can do the sort of full stack of design, from research to UX design to interface design, maybe even to interaction design. But when you say product designer, it also means that they're doing some of the strategic product work as well. So working hand in hand with the product person, basically to make strategic decisions or to even develop that strategy for the product. When it comes to something like product owner or product manager, you might have heard, this one is more tricky. And oftentimes, at least like here in Berlin, especially, they're used incorrectly. So product owner is actually a Scrum term. It is a role in a Scrum team. So it implies that if you're calling someone a product owner, that you're using Scrum, though I've not found that always to be true in practice. And actually, if you read the Scrum guide or you read the evolving Scrum manual that's put out every single year, product owner is more like a hat a person wears. They sit inside the team, they play a leadership function. They might do things like manage and groom the backlog. They might have some facilitation purposes inside the team, but they're like part of the team. They're writing tickets, they're working in tools like Jira, and they're sort of like doing the executional part of the job. But ultimately, like anyone in the team can wear this product owner hat. Anyone could write the tickets or manage the backlog. It actually doesn't have to be the product person. When you talk about product manager, that one is actually, like, from my perspective, the job title that a product person in your team should have. And it implies that they do both the management side of things, the strategy side of things, and that executional part that the product owner does as well. So for me, like in a lot of cases, I've observed these terms being used interchangeably or even backwards. Because people get confused by the word owner versus manager, but actually the product owner is the executional role and the product manager is the more strategic one in theory.
Do you think that this is obvious for like business side? I mean, the owners of the companies that are asking for your services?
This is why I think that you end up seeing companies where the product owner is like the more senior level person inside an organization. The product manager is like a more junior level role because of these words like owner and manager. And actually it should be the reverse if you're a company that has both. And so when I've worked like you on the sort of software house side of consulting, or even in-house in a company working with business side, I often have to spend some time doing education and explaining where these terms come from and what you can expect from each of these roles.
Could you explain your role in your previous project and the buffer between the business and the project team, or maybe a combination of several of the above roles?
In my previous project, the one that we were collaborating on, I felt like my role could best be described with some kind of octopus analogy where I was doing a lot of different types of things at different levels. So just at a glance, I was the product person in the cross-functional team. I was also bridging the gap between the developers and the business side. I was the one helping to create and iterate on different processes and ways of working, not just for the developers, but also with the business side. I was working closely with our product designer. I was running user research, and I was also trying to do that sort of strategic product work as well. So I remember really early days in my career, I read this article that referred to product managers as like the janitor of the team, like sort of cleaning up and doing, all the things that don't like neatly fall into somebody's role. And even though that's like maybe a janitor doesn't sound like the most positive spin on the responsibilities, I do see the role like this. For me, like whatever isn't taken by somebody else is something that I would do. I'm a person who likes to feel useful and helpful, and I really like being this connection point. I think that it's like a special skill set that maybe can be undervalued in the industry, to be able to speak in one way to your like expert level developers or expert level designer, and then translate information back to business people, and then take information from business people and then translate that into language that makes sense for your team. And I think that skill set is an invaluable part of the product toolkit. And I think sometimes it isn't appreciated as much as maybe it should be.
That was funny when you said, when you played the role of octopus, so you played any kind of roles at the same time, it must be exhausting for the person like you, right?
I think the product role inherently involves a lot of context switching. And for someone, for example, like a developer, if you talk to a developer about context switching, this is like the worst thing that can happen to their day.
Exactly.
They like need a flow state. They need to be able to work in an uninterrupted way so that they can be creative and, detail oriented in their space. The product role is like totally the opposite. I'm being interrupted like constantly all day long, being asked a million questions about, 10 topics at once. But this is something that I like and something that comes really naturally.
How do you manage those expectations and how do you explain to business that not everything can be done as expected in the given timeline?
The thing about the product role is that like normally no one reports to you. So you're no one's manager, and yet everyone in the team and company has to do work for you. And that requires a certain amount of skill. And I think that this ability to be able to translate information between different groups of people is a really important part of this. Education is really important. Using diagrams, explaining, hey, I understand that like you want this much, but actually in this time frame, you can get this much, and here's why. And here's where the complexity lives, and here's where our unknowns are, and here's where we might get into trouble. And I want to make sure that whatever it is that you promise to our users, especially in a B2B context, will be there by the time frame that you've specified.
So it's all about constant education, right? Upwards and downwards. So like a business and a technology team, you have to explain and educate everybody. Talk about the goals. The common goal of the company. Tell me, do you have some like side coach or a person that specializes in like psychology? Because this is a very tricky part. You talk with people, you work with people, and you work with different personalities. Do you have some support?
So a lot of product people typically find it easier either to work with the devs in the team, or they find it easier to work with stakeholders, the business. And I was always a product person. Maybe you could tell from us working together, I'm much better at working with the team. And I did do a lot of training. So when I was living in Australia, actually, my employers sent me to tons of different types of management and leadership training to grow those influencing skills and learn how to work with different sort of archetypes of stakeholders who might have had, different personalities or different perspectives or different levels of tech knowledge. And I think that those kinds of trainings really helped me out. They really did have a lot of psychology at the foundation, like you said. Like anything in your profession, if it doesn't come naturally to you, then it's kind of like, a muscle, right? You have to sort of like build that muscle and try it out and practice and learn from your mistakes and try something else in order to grow that skill set.
Sometimes you have to do some trade-offs, and you have to pass to the team some, let's say, a difficult decision, because business at the end, they have to have, it's imposing like a very hard decision. We have to do this in the way that, maybe the dev team is not going to like. How do you explain that to the team? Do you have some techniques? You just go on. You stay transparent with them. You have to explain it somehow.
Yeah, I think. Honestly, like managing expectations is tricky because people are tricky, right? And so hopefully, like if you have to bring bad news to the team or even to your business stakeholders, but in this case, let's talk about the team. So maybe we've gotten a deadline that's unreasonable, or maybe our scope has creeped so far that we have to add in a bunch of things that we didn't anticipate, or actually in some cases the project might even be shutting down. I've had to break that bad news to teams before as well. I think that this is why it's really important to have kind of individualized interpersonal relationships with the people in the team. So it's not just about influencing and managing expectations, but it's about knowing your team.
And what's the most difficult aspect of working with developers, with software developers, in your opinion?
I like working collaboratively and I like working in teams, and it's never been that hard for me. I think the trickiest part is, especially as a product person, like if I get handed a decision that I don't agree with, and I have to bring that to the team, and I know that they're really not going to agree with it, I think that this can be one of the most challenging scenarios that I encounter. And usually for me, I don't hide my dissatisfaction with the team. I don't think that serves anyone. So usually I bring these kinds of things forth, for better or worse, and say, hey, this thing has come down to me. I don't agree with what it is, but this is the direction that the business is going, and we need to make sure that we do a great job, even if it's not something we agree with.
Did you enjoy working with Stepwise team, Stepwise developers?
Yeah, I loved working with the Stepwise developers, and I really liked the partnership aspect of our collaboration. I think that this is really important for me in working with an external provider, is to make sure that we feel like we're one team and one culture. And this is just as true with the people inside the team as it is with the management. So I really loved our working arrangement.
Do you think that culture fit, it's important?
I think it's the number one thing. For me, like in choosing an external provider or an agency or software house or even freelancers, for me, the culture fit is number one always. And then maybe like technical skills after that, because building software is a team sport and you have to be able to work with people well and with as little friction as possible in order to build great products. So this is what I'm looking for first and foremost.
Let's talk about processes. How do you build the processes when you work with the business and a new team?
I'm not that structured in my own work. Maybe that comes as a surprise, but I really had to learn to observe my team and watch what was happening and sort of read their signals to understand when it's the right moment to introduce something or introduce a process or introduce a change. Oftentimes I actually like spend some observational period, and I almost like wait for it to feel a little uncomfortable before I step in and say, hey, I think maybe 2-week sprints would be great, or hey, I think we should, do a demo here, or hey, I think that we should include a retro. For me, I do like Scrum. I prefer Scrum to other methodologies, especially because across my career, I've largely worked with remote or distributed teams, and Scrum provides a structured framework that makes it easier when people aren't sitting next to one another. At least that's been my experience. So I like things like doing a daily check-in and seeing everyone's faces, even briefly, and hearing what they're working on. I like the sort of 2-week sprint cadence because it feels comforting, like a security blanket or something.
Okay. Top 3 tools that helps you working efficiently with the team and the business.
Yeah, so I'm going to cheat and say Jira and Confluence together. I know I used to work at Atlassian, but I was a huge fan of these tools way before I worked there. And since, I don't think I could do my job without Jira and Confluence, honestly. Then as a product person, I am completely in love with Miro. I think this is the greatest tool of all time, and it is so great for visualizing things, facilitating. I'm learning every single day new ways to make use of that one. And the third one is Figma. Figma is leaps and bounds above anything that we've had in the design space before. And all of these things make it so easy to visualize work, bring progress transparently to all different areas of the team, to collect feedback, to iterate. And that's what's really important.
I'm not going to hide that I'm a fan of working with the team. That's partially present in the office because I would like to talk to them, have a coffee, building this personal link between us, also eating together, not every day, but from time to time. I know that you are a fan of the notion like remote first. How would you like to convince me that, remote first is better than, office work from time to time? What would you, how would you convince me like, hey man, you have to try that. That have obvious benefits.
Yeah, the truth is that I think for certain kinds of personalities, no matter what it is that I say, remote work like isn't going to be the optimal choice. And this involves like people who are both extroverted and external processors. These types of people who like both gain energy from being around other people and they like to sort of like talk through their thinking, they're going to really struggle with remote work. So the truth is that if you're going to go remote first, you need to hire specifically for people that want to work in this way, because for it to work, you need to have a certain level of discipline and commitment to your tools and to your ways of working and to each other. But outside of this, I really believe in remote first. I think in part because I'm personally introverted and I like having my personal space, but
Oh.
I also really appreciate being able to work with people from all over the planet. So I love the diversity that this brings. I love the opportunity for talent. And for me, I really don't have any issues working in this way.
What do you think about working with Polish developers? Do you have any opinion, or you want to stay like diplomatic and say nothing? They are as good as the others. Do you see anything special or any differences?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I wonder if it's because I'm an American from New York, where there's tons of Polish people and tons of people with Polish heritage, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like working with like the team at Stepwise and even working with Polish developers in my previous teams here in Berlin, it always was really easy and natural for me from like a cultural perspective. And maybe that seems surprising, but like I really appreciate things like directness and teamwork and openness. I think that these are some of the traits that I look for in any person in my team. And these kinds of qualities were definitely things that I found in our teammates from Stepwise, which made it really easy and natural.
Imagine that you are a startup founder, startup maker. You have to build your own product. And then, you have funds already secured, you have marketing sales, because that's how you should start your startup business. And then you have to start building your product quite fast. Time to market is very important. What do you do? Do you build your competences and skill set in-house in terms of software development? Or you go for a company like Stepwise? I mean, when you have already like different skill sets, different seniority, you have different projects when people can exchange the knowledge. What would you do?
Oh, that's such a hard question. And I think that it's a real life challenge for most startup founders. What I hear in the industry is that a lot of founders want their team to be in-house. They want the IP in-house. They want the commitment in-house. And I think that actually this is a mistake. If I were to start my own thing and I would want to be able to build a team quickly and deliver something to the market, I think I would be more inclined actually to hire a software house, and preferably one that I had an existing relationship with, but at minimum one maybe that had been referred inside my network, or one that had a good reputation online, and definitely one that had similar cultural values. For me, it's never really mattered whether or not the team is in-house or external. I always treat them like they're my team. I told you this many times before, and you could see it with our team.
I confirm.
But I think that this also comes from like my days in New York, where actually like most of the teams that I worked with to build products were technically external. It never felt like that from the commitment perspective or the culture perspective, but that was the case.
Thank you very much. Now the special question comes. I'm following you on LinkedIn. What do you publish? What do you like? That's very good insight for me. And yeah, something that caught my attention was a GIF or a picture, like two statements. You have to care for yourself to be able to care for others. That's your motto. That's something you feel. That's something you follow.
Yeah, so it's
Life.
an illustration from Liz and Molly, who are the authors of a really cool book called, I think, No Hard Feelings. They have a new book coming out as well. And they make these illustrations that I think say so much with so little. And I think that this is one of those things. In my free time, I also work with a startup here in Berlin called Bunch, and they're building a leadership coaching app. And I support them with mentoring, but also with a lot of the tip content. And something that we talk about often inside like their team and inside their community, as well as something that I talk about with other product people, is this idea that you really, in order to be a good leader or a good manager for others, you have to make sure that you've taken enough care for yourself. It's a kind of principle like on an airplane. Like you need to put on your mask first before you put on the masks of others,
Exactly.
right? And I think that in order to be a great leader that really can like give to your team, you need to make sure that you're cared for properly, because otherwise like you're running on fumes. It's not sustainable. It will lead to burnout. And also you won't be able to give and support your team properly. So this is an area that I'm not so great in, to be totally transparent. And I'm working on it. Oftentimes I will like give and give and give to my team without thinking, suddenly realize that I don't have anything sort of like left for myself. And actually like the reverse needs to be true. You need, as a leader, you need to care for yourself and make sure that your mental health is there and that you're taking the time, and also that you're modeling these kinds of self-care behaviors to your team to show that you're working a normal number of hours and that you're taking your vacation time and that you're getting rest, right? Because you don't want them to like follow your bad example if you're not modeling that behavior.
Okay, that was my last question. Maybe you have some question to me at the end.
Maybe you want to share an example or a situation, but is there a particular kind of challenge that you face as the head of a software house, either with your team or with your clients, that comes up consistently and you've had to sort of find your own way through?
To build the integrity of the entire team, because we are working with different clients, different cultures, different nationalities, and our teams are quite autonomous. We are trying to build a democratic approach. So you felt that my team, when working in the previous projects with you, they were very autonomous. I mean, we were not really imposing to them such things like processes, how they should behave working with you or with the client. But it has a backlash. So 5 autonomous teams, they start to be like separate islands, you know. You're building an archipelago and then somehow you have to, you know, like integrate those different islands between them. Another one is, you know, we are trying to build the education culture. So we are trying to motivate people to educate themselves. I mean, to go forward, to discover new technologies, to become a better team players, etc. Sometimes our message is not well received, or maybe we are not explaining that in the best way. So they feel like we are imposing something. I think so. Yeah, I mean, there is still room for improvement. I mean, how we should promote this education culture, but we know also that when they work with the client, especially with the product leaders like you, they develop themselves very fast, and we would like to take this knowledge into other projects. And that was one of the best thing we did with you, is like we were inviting teams for other projects, watching you how you run, for example, demo, planning sessions, etc. This is how we share the knowledge between different projects. And yeah, I would like to thank you again for that.
Do you have an example of like a number one top thing that you learned from one of your clients that you either brought internally to Stepwise or that you brought to one of your other clients?
Proof of concept and openness to experiments. That's something, yeah, we learned from 1-2 clients, and we really value the openness on their side. Yeah, that was very important for us.
Yeah, I think that can be tough because some clients are all about deadlines and delivery. And when you have developers saying, hey, I'd really like to try this thing out, I think that sometimes it can be easier sold into clients like once it's been explained, not just, hey, we want to try something new, which might be the case, but also to be able to say like, and it might bring you this business benefit depending on what we've learned here. And I think that part is like one of the ways that it can be sold into the client. Like, what have your devs found?
I would say less and less, Merissa, because you know, the people, especially, you know, the business owners in the digital world, they are, you know, smart enough to understand that experiments can build something called a game changer on the market. So either you change something really, like some fundamentals, you bring something that will break, you know, the market, and the competition will go away, or you just follow, you know, like regular paths, and then you're just going to be another company that is already in the market. And how are you going to show that you are different? I mean, they are conscious, and less problems to explain them. Hey, let's experiment. Hey, let's experiment together. Thank you very much for the nice conversation. It was a pleasure to talk to you once again. Hope to stay in touch with you, and yeah, I will follow you on the LinkedIn, and hopefully we can meet in person somewhere in the near future, Merissa.
Yes, same for me. This was a total pleasure. And I also hope that we have the chance to work together in the future.